BS here, just the facts.
And now we present to you America's quintessential iconoclastic anomaly. Wow. In talk radio, your host, Joe Cristiano.
Folks, it's time for us to take back control of our government. Now, before this bureaucratic, oversized, and self-serving federal government starves us of our property, our freedom, our rights, and our liberty. To do this, we must shed conventional thinking regarding our political structure. We need to be revolutionaries in thought, dissidents in action. Only after we recognize what our government is doing to our freedom and our Constitution will we start taking it back. And folks, that's what this program is all about. Welcome to the University of Logic, better known as Cristiano's Conservatory, correcting convoluted conversations.
And are you going to do a Civil War reenactment soon?
No, why do you ask?
Well, because you have a Confederate Civil War hat on.
Oh, yes. Well, this is actually it is a Confederate hat. It is, all right? Mm-hmm. But I do not want to convey the wrong message.
Well,
I believe that the Civil War was fought because of states' rights. And states have been, by the Constitution, they are autonomous. You know, they trump the federal government.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And now, I do not believe in slavery. Let me make that straight. I'm not a believer in slavery. I thought that I abhor it in every way, shape, or form. But the principle of states' rights is what made this country. And in fact, when you look at it, see, the states are sovereign, and that's the way the Constitution was designed. That's the way the individual state constitutions are designed. States are sovereign, not the federal government. Now, the federal government is sort of like a town hall. There's a large town hall where the states go to. They call it Congress and the Senate and stuff like that. Actually, just Congress at the time. And they iron out their differences, and they, just like a town hall that you have in a small town, people get together and they iron out the discussion. Sure, yeah. But people, when they go to their town hall meeting, they're not abdicating their rights.
They just sit there and ask questions.
That's right. They ask questions, they resolve issues, and whatever the case may be. And that's how this nation was settled. So why I'm wearing a Confederate hat is because I believe in that principle. Now, I am a Yankee from way back. I mean, a real Yankee.
I was going to say,
oh, yeah. Of course. I'm
New Yorker. Yeah.
Hey, I sang doo-wop back in the 50s, man. You know, do-do-do-do. But really, I was a big Yankee fan when I was a kid. I went to Yankee Stadium by myself. I'm not kidding you. You know what? It's funny. Back in the old, what do you think? Me traveling by myself on the New York City L and subway. I had to go all the way down to Manhattan and back again in the West Bronx to get to 161st Street at Yankee Stadium that was built in a neighborhood. And that's why it was such an oddball shape, right?
Yeah.
And I used to go there, and for 25 cents, I would watch the Yankees play. I would sit in the bleachers. Cents. I would stand right behind Mickey Mantle.
Really?
Yeah, right behind Mickey Mantle. He knows me well. You don't know. And in fact, call him if you don't believe me. If it wasn't for my guidance, I don't think he ever would have made it.
Probably not.
He would not call in right now.
No, really.
Yeah,
I mean, if you don't believe me, if you don't believe me, call him now. I'll wait for his response.
Did you heckle the batters from back
No. I'll tell you who did that.
Batter.
I'll tell you who did that. No. I didn't have to do that because I tried not to miss a game against the Cleveland Indians. And the Cleveland Indians had Jimmy Pearsall in center field. And what he used to do, he used to play deep center field. And then if the umpire would call a strike or whatever, a call that he would disagree with, he would run all the way in. You know, of course, he was nuts. You know, he'd run all the way in and argue with him. He was great. I love the guy. And I used to love when they had double headers with Cleveland. Joe, I used to get there early in the morning and stay there till
How old boy were you?
12, 13, that's all. 12, I guess 12 years old.
That'd be unheard of these days.
Yeah, and then I used to come home at night all by myself, riding the subway, come home. Well, my mother was a real...
You had a cell phone, though, right?
Oh, sure, yeah.
So your mother could keep a watch over you
I
every
carried
minute.
a toothpick. No, I carried a pop stick. That was my protection, you know.
Yeah.
And but I did that, and it was 25 cents, and it was great. And when you sat down, you did come home with splinters.
So 25 cents. You were a real rich kid, and you got to
Oh
go
yeah,
to the ball
absolutely,
game.
yeah, rich kid, really rich.
You
right,
know,
right,
kids
right.
in your state of life today, they can't walk in a ball game.
It was a nickel.
Sad,
I think the Subway at the time was a nickel. It was a nickel for the Subway. You know, it was unbelievable.
Different world.
Yeah, absolutely different world. But so I'm a real. My point being is that I am a real Yankee. All right. Now I haven't followed baseball probably in 55 years. I haven't. I just haven't had the time. I don't follow them. I'm sort of like a Yankee fan if they're playing. Blah blah blah. But I'm wearing this hat.
The Confederate hat.
Yeah, the Confederate hat. Because to show my support for states' rights.
Amen.
Yeah.
I'm a Southern boy, and I go right along with that.
Now, the big
Good old
problem...
Southern whipping, you know.
Yeah, the big problem with that is that we don't think that way anymore. You know, we think, and I want to tie that in to the President's State of the Union message, although I don't want to talk about it as everyone else did. I'm going to talk about it differently.
Please, Joe.
But for a moment, I'd like to regress.
Regress.
Okay, I like to regress. No, I know. Listen, all right, guy. You know, folks, you got to be here with these clowns.
These clown
I say
college,
I want
clown college.
all I have to do is say I want to regress. Everyone's eyes rolling back of their heads. I get no support around here at all. I'm telling you,
looks like a slot
if
machine.
anyone out there, Radio Land, wants to come in and give me some, I appreciate you showing up. You know, because I get absolutely no support at all. Could you guys at least encourage me to go on instead of rolling your eyes all the time?
Yourself.
Regress yourself. That's
okay.
right. Yeah.
Get regressed.
It's an
my
NWA
goodness
song.
gracious, you know. Yeah, let me tell you something. I get no respect around here. No respect at all. I tell you, you know. I tell you how bad it is. You know, it's my birthday the other day. You know what my wife got me for my birthday?
What?
A girlfriend. I tell you, I get no respect at all. Nothing. No, really. That's the way I feel around here. You guys got to give me a little bit of
That's all. Happy birthday,
last week, and I always catch hell after this because whenever I say, they say, you talked about that last week. You know, well, I know that, all right? But last week we talked about the 912 group, and the thing I just could not get out of my head all week.
That you're a member of.
Yeah, that somehow I'm a member of, right? You know, is that their first principle is America is good. And I couldn't figure out what they meant by that. And I thought first, I said, you know, I want to go to their meetings. I want to be a guest speaker, by the way. Could you imagine me as a guest speaker?
Oh, boy.
And I want to ask them this question. Yeah, all right. If America is good, and America has 5% of the population, why do we have 25% of the incarcerated people in jail? Think about that. If America was good, we'd have 1%. You know what's we have 25 of the incarcerated people in the world, 25% of the United States, but yet America is good. It bothers me so much when people organizations put out platitudes and they have no idea what they're talking about, but it's feel good. Now, I want to bring that forward. This is why I say that. Because, you know, when we say things that it makes us feel good, but there's no substance behind it. That means we don't have to think. And this program is not about individual, what the president said or didn't say or Congress said. It's about the way we think about our liberty. I don't give a darn about what anybody says. It's the way we think that I'm concerned about. That's what this program's about.
Emotional attachment has not always anything to do with logical thinking as far as the society's going.
Absolutely. There's one of my higher paid PhDs from Clown College.
You're welcome.
Wow. He's pretty
Very
smart.
Good. That's a good statement, right? All right, you're going to get a raise,
man.
You know?
Cool.
But you know, I'm going to read something to you. It says, yes, truth. Funny how everyone is always asking for it, but when they get it, they don't believe it because it is not what they want to hear. Now, who said that? Oh, Aristotle? No, listen to this. Spoken by Helena Cassadine, who was the fictional character on the American soap opera General Hospital famously originated by film actress Elizabeth Taylor in 1981.
Where do you get these
I
quotes from?
have to understand.
Hey, are you serious?
Joe, where do
I'm
you...
serious.
You got to read the little publication for the.
Oh, okay. I thought he
I
was just
always
reading
thought that
from
was
soap
kind of a
operas.
deep show.
It's
I
soap
really
opera magazine.
see
yeah,
some
that's
underlying
right, yeah.
currents of
Soap opera
intelligence
magazine.
Yeah.
through General Hospital.
Yeah, the General Hospital and National Geographic go right together.
Esquire.
But more recently, quoted by Jack Nicholson and Tom Cruise in the movie, A Few Good Men, right? Is that the name of the movie?
That's right, A Few Good Men, yeah, great
where
movie.
Tom Cruise comes in and says, I want to know the truth. And what is Jack Nicholson? Those
You
classic
can't
words.
handle the truth.
You can't handle the truth. Exactly. And that's the problem with America today. We can't handle the truth. And that's why when Obama gave the State of the Union, whatever you want to call it.
Joe, did you even watch it?
What?
Did you even watch the State of the
Let me be
Union?
honest with you. I really tried. I got to about 15, 17 minutes, and I was shaking. My wife says, you got to leave. She says, you're going to have a heart attack.
He and I were
couldn't take it.
texting back and
You were
forth.
shaking.
I couldn't.
We were
I
making
could
comments.
not. I couldn't take it, right? And so, folks, this program is about that, okay? It's not about what people say, but it's about the way we think. Do we have
About another minute before break.
another minute before break? What else do we have going here? All right. What about our mind control? Mind control.
That's right. It's time for Mind Control Misspeak.
Folks, this is a new segment of our program called Mind Control Misspeak Moment. And today, the Mind Control Misspeak Moment is when congressmen and senators say, well, we would have passed that bill, but the other side was unwilling to compromise. They use the word compromise. Now, we're going to go on a break now, aren't we? We have a break time?
Yeah.
Let's hold on to that compromise. Let's go for a break. We'll come back and let me explain
It's a
what I
short
mean
segment.
Yes, master.
Now, if you can't handle the truth, go listen to something like Looney Tunes, okay? And then you'll have fun. You enjoy. Tomorrow morning, you'll be in the same frame of mind as you were today, all right? Tomorrow morning, I want every one of my listeners to be in a different frame of mind.
What's wrong with him?
Now, I tell you this all the time. I hear this they say, well, they have to compromise. I had, my girlfriend Sally, who comes here once in a while, at one time she said, your problem is, I said, I got a lot of problems, but tell me one at least, Sally. Just one. Don't list too many of them. She said, you take everything as black and white. She said, you always take an extreme position on everything.
Would you say thank
I said,
you?
I never knew that. I said, I really did. But you're right. I should have said thank you. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, nothing's black and white. And she says, nothing is extreme. She says, the answer is always in the middle. And I thought to myself, when you are talking principle, how do you walk them? How do you say, well, we'll accept half the principle and we'll throw half away? But I don't want to tell her that too deep. I don't want to go. I said, Sally, that reminds me of this guy I know. He used to beat his wife every night of the week. Every night, beat her the heck almost to death every night of the week. I said, hey, Charlie, that's not good. You beat your wife every night of the week. That's not good.
Joe, you keep mentioning wife beating.
I know, isn't that terrible? My wife
it
beats
is.
me.
Why do you do it?
That's why. My wife beats me.
Make your point, Joe.
Yeah. And I said, well, geez, that's something. I said, what you should do, Charlie, is, now don't go to the other extreme and be nice to your wife and stop beating her. Why don't you just beat her on Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday?
Compromise.
Well, compromise.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And I said to myself, you understand that, Sally? She didn't understand that. She doesn't understand that because people don't understand you can never, ever, ever compromise your principle.
That's why states' rights.
And this is when they get together. You think they're getting together to discuss the issues? No, they're saying, hey, I got something on you. You don't do this. This is what happens to you. They start, it's the mafia getting together, saying, we're going to cut you down here. You're not going to get this. You're going to lose that. That's what they're saying when they get together.
Well, I mean,
they're not compromising, but they should never compromise. But you're right, period, yeah.
Well, the nature of truth in and of itself is that it's narrow. You don't see a plane landing anywhere but a runway. If they tried the woods, that wouldn't work out too well.
Well, wait a minute. They always land on the runway. Isn't that kind of extreme?
Yeah.
I know,
Why
right?
is it?
That's just...
They can land on the water, you know.
Well, those airplane
extreme.
pilots are very narrow-minded. They don't try anything new.
And that's
It's
what-
just awful.
Right.
Good
I
point.
say same thing to that's a good point. It's like you have an airplane, it's got to land on a tarmac, exactly the same spot, or it crashes and everyone could die, right? But you can't say, well, don't be extreme. Sometimes they can land on the marshlands, and sometimes on a mountainside, and sometimes
When
you
you're
can't
talking
do that.
matter of principle,
Why would you-
there's not
Right.
a lot of wiggle room.
Yeah.
Why would you
So
want to
there's
try
not a lot
something
of
new?
wiggle room.
When it comes to landing a plane, why would you want to try something new, though? I'd want to just stick to the program, landing.
Very good. I'm
Well, you wanna live,
glad
don't you?
I'm glad I have this guy on staff. Without him, we would be
wants to
lost.
live, right?
Very good.
Be
We're
no
all
joke.
scholars.
No, but you see my point. So when these guys say, well, we would have gotten this done if we didn't compromise. No. That means both sides are wrong. They don't have the principles to stand on.
Yeah.
They're just trying to convince each other
they're
back
trying
and
to
forth and intimidate
pander.
each other.
They're only
Right.
trying to pad their
So
own pocket.
whenever you the misspeak is that, and we say this all the time. Well, geez, if the Republicans or the Democrats would only compromise. Well, no, they should never compromise, and that's why we have an executive branch, a judicial branch, and a legislative branch. You see,
So
folks.
they don't compromise.
They
That's
also both have an agenda that leads to the same thing, which is more spending, more control.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Which
the
has been
point
going
being
on.
is that government is not intended to work. That's why we have a House, we have a Senate, we have a judicial branch, and they all have sort of veto power over each other. You don't want this stupid thing to work. If this stupid thing works, we're all in trouble. And this is what's happening now. It's now working.
Yeah, it sure is.
And,
Yeah.
And in fact,
And not in
when
a good way. I
when
mean, we're
it
talking
doesn't
a bad
work,
way.
what does Obama say? Well, if Congress won't pass the law, I will. Well, that's unconstitutional. And I want to know when he said that several times during his speech, by the way, the State of the Union, why he was not impeached then and there, right in front of everyone, God and creation.
The system works for them.
Yeah, so, all right. Now, talking about Obama's speech, and by the way, folks, on our second half, we actually have an intelligent person calling in. Seriously. No, really. No, it's
you
not
did.
me.
You forgot to tell
It's
us
not
that.
me.
Yeah.
I'm not calling in.
You forgot to tell us.
It's Adrian Moore. He is the vice president, Dr. Adrian Moore. He's the vice president of Freedom Foundation, and he wants to talk about the logic of public service unions, one of my favorite subjects. I can't wait for him to call. He'll be with us around 7:30, right after the hard break at 7:30, okay? Yeah. Now, I want to give you my take on the State of the Union message. First of all, it had to match the State of the Union messages of George W. Bush. I mean, on par. Couldn't stand his, couldn't sit through his, I don't know which one was worse, but this one really was a tie for worse. What was bad about it is that instead of speaking to the facts, he told stories. Well, that's nice. Oh, and here's Mary Jane. She's sitting here, and Mary Jane now has insurance. It irrelevant to what's going on. You're addressing 317 million people,
With
and he
one
picks
example.
one person. He says, here, that's proof. No, that's not proof of anything. And people actually got drawn into that. Now, those that did not had the same problem I had, listening to him in the first place. And in fact, he did not address any problems that existed when he was first elected. And he gave this is what he gave no accounting for his actions.
Or for Obamacare,
Now, the worst part, I'm going to give you the worst part.
the failure.
The worst part of the thing, was he gave the impression throughout and you haven't heard this any place except for Liberty Talk Radio, out of the mouth of Joe Cristiano, okay? He gave the impression to everyone that without government edict, nothing could and would be done. Think about that. Well, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to make sure this gets done, and I'm going to make. In other words, you can't do anything. You as an individual are powerless. I have all the power, and he reminded us that at the 15 minutes or so, about 10 times he reminded me, I am no one. He has it all, and I'm subject to his whim. I thought that was devastating, and no one, not one person that I know of, picked that up.
Well, what was worse is nobody's going to notice that because he promised them a bunch of candy. For example, he promised that He's going to give 99% of the students in the colleges broadband. So nobody's going to go, hey, does he have the right to do that? Or, hey, hail dictator in chief. It's, I'm going to get broadband internet. That's so exciting.
Absolutely.
Daddy Warbucks.
Exactly.
Yeah. And as I said last week, if
Daddy.
I could find my own notes from last week.
Daddy Longlegs.
If I could find, the age of decadence, is marked by desire to live off a bloated state. That's one of the stages of decadence and the fall of an empire. That's one of the major rules, right?
That's right. We talked about that a couple weeks ago.
You have to understand, he marked his speech constantly by saying, I will do this, and I will ensure this, and to make certain that you get, and that
if Congress won't act,
he
I will.
hammered that, and he hammered it, and he hammered it.
Yep.
And he never said all those things that he said he was going to do, which he shouldn't have done, but that he never did, he never addressed those. And to see the criminals in that place stand up and applaud was just too much for me to witness. That's what I had to leave. And what about, here are the questions that I would have asked him. Mr. Change You Can Believe In. This was his mantra while running for office. But after he got elected, it got shelved, all right?
Did you hear the proclamation about that climate change is a fact? You hear that one?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Climate
No, I didn't hear
change
that.
is a fact, and they all just went wah, crazy about it.
You say it long enough, loud enough, and often enough, people will believe it. Hopefully, probably, maybe.
Joseph Goebbels proved that.
Yeah. Here, I have some notes. I had to take notes on this thing. Now, here are some of the things that I thought I would have questioned. They don't take questions, Here's one. You never hear this. Mr. President, how many aircraft carriers, how many jet fighters and pilots did we lose last year in takeoff and landings on our aircraft carriers? I believe 11 aircraft carriers that we have floating around now. And how much did it cost in time and in lives? Just in keeping it going,
That's a good question.
Well, it protects our freedom.
Now, by the way, I know guys who've been on the aircraft carriers. I know the answer to that. I'm not going to get into that now. And it's unconscionable, right? And is this an increase or decrease from last year? And I'm talking non-combative, of course. I'm not talking about in
training.
Just in training, in keeping going. Well, good question, right? That would have murdered. I tell you, right then and there, our defense budget would have been locked up forever. Because if he would have given a truthful answer on that, people would not have believed it. All right. Second, how many of our young men and women came back physically fit, but are classified as basket cases because they were forced to commit acts that in normal society would be deemed cruel and unusual punishment, or, of course, death, In other words, since they committed, we're asking our soldiers, young men and women, to commit crimes of humanity. They came back goofy. How many were there? Why are more people on food stamps today than last year? I think it's like 700.
economy's getting better.
I think it's like
The
700.
getting
Yeah,
better.
like 772,000 more this year than last year. I mean, some phenomenal
But
amount.
the economy is booming, and
Yeah,
everybody's
that's right.
getting more jobs.
Well, they're McDonald's jobs, but they're getting more jobs,
Why is it that
protest.
those in and around
Playing
Washington
with the
make
figures.
about 15,000, that's conservative, or more, than the average American family? All right? Yeah, that's it. Why is America listed numbers in 47th place amongst the friendliest nations to open or start a business? 47. We used to be number one. We're 47 now. Could you? 47. Why do we spend more than the entire world in military when we are a peace-loving nation? Why does the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, the TSA, and a dozen other alphabet organizations keep track of everything? And by the way, how do you intend, this is the big one, how do you intend to pay back those who invest in your cockamamie idea of a government IRA called a MIRA?
Oh, my.
Now, you have no money. You keep on going further in debt. You have no money. Aren't you really borrowing this money from me? And if you are, and you're not making any money, how are you going to pay it back? May I suggest, Mr. President, and please, I want this on the air, may I suggest it's not my IRA, it's really your IRA. So don't be this truthful to me. Let's go on break. Folks, you're back. You're listening to Joe Cristiano, the Chancellor of the University of Logic, better known as Cristiano's Conservatory, correcting convoluted conversations and helping us do exactly that. We have on the line Dr. Adrian Moore, Vice President, Reason Foundation. He is our guest. I am so pleased to have him with us this evening, talking about public service unions. Adrian, can you hear me?
Yes, Joe. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us here on 1170 KFAQ Liberty Talk Radio. Adrian, what's on your mind tonight?
Well, we were talking before about this idea of chatting about government worker union. I think it's an issue that I've paid attention to for years, dang near a decade and a half. But I think for most people, really it was brought to their attention when Governor Walker up in Wisconsin 2 years ago decided to take on the unions in kind of a big way, and they decided to fight back in a very public way. And so a lot of national attention got paid to that fight, which the governor won, to rein in their power over the politics of the state and their power over taxpayer dollars. And suddenly people started saying, whoa, you mean what? Unions do what? And paying attention to this issue.
You know, I have a very strict, old-fashioned look at this. You know, unions were formed. Listen, I'm from New York. I worked in a factory, right? And, I know what it's like. I understand it. Now, I worked in a factory, a glove factory. This is when, in America, we actually sewed gloves. Women used to wear white gloves. Remember when they went out? You may be too young, right. Adrian, but, And I worked in a factory that made gloves. I used to cut them on these big machines. They had dies, and they go down into the material, into wood and whatever. And your hands were underneath these machines constantly with these sharp dies. I mean, one slip up, gone. Everything's gone, But here's the point. Do you know what would happen? This was so interesting. Everyone thinks of the Women's Garment Workers Union as, we work together. They have all these ads. When the union rep would come up to the 5th floor, which we were on, he would knock on the door of the elevator. Now, I was by the elevator because I was by the place where we laid the material out, and then the gals who were on the sewing machines were down further. And I would go, I knew whenever I heard the elevator, a knock on the elevator, I knew it was him. I would open the door, and he would ask for the boss, and the boss would get his firearm, put it in his pocket, I'm not kidding you, and walk in the elevator with him, He was literally afraid to come out to speak to the gals.
Wow.
And so I have now, this is a place where the boss really took care of everyone. These gals didn't know much. They were relatively, they didn't have a financial acumen or anything like that. And the boss was sort of like the father confessor for everybody. And he watched out for all of them. And he was a very, very good person, all right? And so I mentioned that only because there were other places where you wanted a union because the boss was just an animal. Now, why do we have unions? We have unions because of the massive abuse by people who are in the higher echelons of the company. I get asked this question all the time. Do you support unions? I said, no, I support good management, because if you have good management, you don't need unions. These gals, this factory that I worked at, these gals would pay the owner the union dues to get rid of the union. That's how much they disliked it. All right. So I'm just saying that when you have a good union. Now, I bring up that story only because, and the government is there to protect the workers, right? There to protect us, right? So what we're doing is we are joining a union to protect ourselves against that organization that is designed and intended and supposed to protect us. Now, would you please unravel that? Explain it to me, because I want to sleep tonight.
That doesn't make a bit of sense.
Yeah. Could you?
Yeah, no, and that's always been the great contradiction. I mean, there's a few contradictions built in here. I mean, you're exactly right. Unions, as you know, take a libertarian perspective on this. You know, voluntary grouping together in order to collectively bargain. You can't say anything wrong about that whatsoever. That people have the right to team up and try to negotiate as a group with the boss if they want. What got screwy was when the government started passing laws and intervening on the side of these unions and distorting the balance of power between the workers and the companies by protecting the unions against companies' rights to say, you know what, you guys can all form a union if you want, but I'm going to hire other people, and I'm not going to deal with the union. And if you want to be in the union, you're going to have to find a company that's willing to take you. So that was one distortion that got brought in. But then, as unionization sort of built up in America, government workers got this idea, and this gets right to the contradiction you brought up. It's one thing to have a union of workers who are going to group together to negotiate with a company in order for pay and conditions. It's another thing to have a group of government workers form a union in order to negotiate with elected officials who they vote the same as you and I and try to get a better deal for themselves. By definition, that means that they are opposing, they are across the table and in opposition to the elected officials we elect to run our government. So they are organizations created to oppose our elected officials. Okay, how anti-democratic can you get? How anti-common sense can you get?
Right. And the thing is, I'm paying for that. If they acquiesce, then all of a sudden I have to pay more taxes so I can overpay people doing jobs that are protected by a union. It doesn't make any sense. The place goes nuts. I go nuts. You wouldn't believe I go nuts, would you, Adrian?
No,
you would never think that in a million years. I know that. You're a nice guy, you know. But there's also another underlying premise, and I like to get to the underlying mentality. My father used to use that expression all the time. He says, "Your mentality," and he says all the time in Italian, you know. He says people's mentalities are wrong, and of course, you know, when I was young, I rolled my eyes back like, "Oh, here he goes again." But he was absolutely correct. You know, now that I'm older, you know, I'm old, you know. I look back, and all the crazy things that my father used to tell me were absolutely correct. I mean, they were genius. You know, like he used to say things like, for example, and this is off the subject, he used to say, "Giuseppe, let me tell you something." I say, "Yeah, Dad." He goes, "Never own anything." And what did I do? Rolled my eyes back, turned around, put my finger to my head like, "Wiki, boop, 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 boop," you know. And now here I am. I go, you know, I own so much garbage. The best thing is not to own anything. You're a free person. You know, you realize the things that your father told you had so much meaning, but you wouldn't think about it. And my father used to complain about people's mentalities all the time. And here is a mentality that just drives me nuts. When the government just talks about business owners, are they bad or good?
They're bad.
Always bad. Always bad. I have a company that I will bet if you gave them a test and said, you know, about how the company is managed and whatever, you know, I bet I score one of the highest in the United States. I know that. I know that for a fact. You know why? Because I leave them alone. They actually run the company. I work for them. I give them what they need to get their job done. I haven't had turnover in 9 years.
Right.
Right. Now, when they talk about the employees, are the employees always bad or always good?
Always.
Always good. Oh, see, the employee. Now, anyone who has ever owned a company, run a company, you know, knows what's your biggest headache. Getting an employee who comes in and doesn't do the work or skunks everything or screws. I mean, right? You would pay anything to get someone really good. I mean, that's all you want. You want someone not a superstar, but someone who is honest, shows up for work, does the work, is kind, all this thing. And yet, there are, of course, by virtue of numbers, there's a lot more bad employees than there are bad employers.
Right.
But yet you never hear that. You never hear it. It's always, well, the boss is here, and the reason for the boss is to subjugate the employees, right? To get as much as they can out of them, to suck the blood right out of their veins, and the employees are there working hard for America. And
well,
I go, come on.
You can't even tell that story about government workers, though, because, okay, in what possible scenario could the evil elected, city council members be oppressing the working people of this that work for the city? I mean, that's just ludicrous. First of all, they're always going to suck up to that easy bunch of constituents, even if they're not unionized.
Yeah.
The consequences would be way too public. They couldn't get away with it in the way that, in theory, the owner of a company could get away with it. Never mind that the owner of a company that did that would only have crappy employees because everybody else would walk. Leave that aside. Just think the logic doesn't make any sense when you're talking about government workers. Those unions only exist to oppose the policies that benefit the taxpayers, to push for more taxpayer money to be spent on government employees,
right,
and to prevent accountability for government employees. I mean, especially when you're looking at one particular union that has always bothered me is the police officers union, because people who we hire as police officers, we give this incredible power. The power to actually just walk up
right,
and shoot someone right in the head whenever they think it's justified. Well, now, with that incredible power has to come incredible responsibility and accountability. Well, the police officers union has only one purpose other than to negotiate for as maximum pay possible, and that is to protect those police officers from any accountability. So the moment a police officer is accused of any kind of bad acting, the police union immediately defends him all out. They don't judge the situation. They say, this guy is actually bad. If police officers unions only defended good cops and took the side of accountability against bad cops, they might actually not be such a bad thing, but
right,
they don't.
Yeah.
They defend all cops no matter how bad they get.
Right.
So they're anti-accountability in a situation where we can't afford to have that.
Right.
Boy, that's a great point.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how we change it. This reliance on the state. How much could I suck out of the state? Is within the sixth? We talked about last week about the 6 stages that define the decline of an empire. And the sixth stage is decadence. And in the age of decadence, you find that there's a massive disparity between rich and poor because the unions now are almost considered rich compared to many other people who are fighting.
About the 1%.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And then the desire to live off a bloated state. So those two problems, once they manifest themselves to any degree, you're within the realm of the last stage of a dying empire. And no one wants to accept that because, America's number one,
Yeah, but in the history of empires, the people have never faced that reality when it was coming upon it. That's part of the reality of that evolution. Yeah, and it's the blindness in a sense is sort of built in. We kind of know what to do. I mentioned Wisconsin at the beginning. I mean, Scott Walker changed the laws of the state of Wisconsin to take the power away from the union.
Right.
So it can be done.
Right.
We just need we need a bunch of other states to do it. I mean, you've talked about the 1%. Most your average 25-year-old government employee out there in America right now can look forward to retiring in 20 or 25 years. So at a pretty young age, 50 or 55.
Right.
And his retirement pay until he dies will be the same or more than his actual salary while he's working. And he and his family will have health care until he dies.
Well, who pays for that?
We do. But not only that, but talk about the 1%. Who among us can do that? I can't. I'm not allowed by tax law to put enough money in my 401k to equal my full salary.
That's correct.
I cannot retire with the same amount of money I make while I'm working. But government workers get to retire with the same amount of money if they work the system at all. If they try at all, they can look forward to retiring with the same amount of money they earned while they were working. It's just ludicrous.
Yeah. But, that speaks to the very last stage of decadence, which is the last stage of the age of a falling empire, and that is debasement of the currency. The only way you can pay these people, their salary for the rest of their lives is if you go into debt. And after you go into debt, you have to borrow money, and the only way you can borrow money is if the Federal Reserve starts the printing presses again. So you're debasing the currency, and you're destroying America by thinking, at the same time, thinking that you are living the good life because you have this large pension. But it's going to bring the whole place down. And to
state and local government who can't print money directly until the federal government bails them out with it.
Right, that's what I mean. Yeah.
But they can't print it directly. Yet they have $4 trillion in unfunded pensions and healthcare liabilities.
That's right.
So they're running up that debt exactly like you described.
Well, in California, that's happening. We have several cities in several states where this is happening. They're filing bankruptcy. They have filed bankruptcy, and that's a good portion.
In a sense, that's putting us all in debt to those employees' pension plan.
Absolutely.
And because where it's going to come from, it's not coming from the profits of a company.
Yeah. And by the way, Adrian, did Obama address this specifically in his State of the Union message?
No.
No, of course. Oh, how surprising! Jeez, I'm shocked. Let me get back on my chair.
Dealing with any real issues or potential problems? Are you kidding?
Unbelievable. Well, now how do we progress and correct this situation? And what is the Reason Foundation? What's your approach on this?
Well, I mean, I think there's two levels of approach. I think the big macro level is what we're talking about, and looking at the example of Wisconsin. I mean, people have to wake up, and I think increasingly people are waking up. We do polling at Reason. We have a quarterly poll, Reason Root poll that we do, and that polling shows that people are increasingly, just like the government is. Everybody knows, the Gallup polls and everything show that people are more less happy with government in general, but they're also waking up to these one-sided deals. And now more and more people are aware that government workers have negotiated this sweetheart deal without anybody realizing it, and that they've become part of the 1%.
Right.
And so that's phase one, is people just have to know it's true. Phase two is then you have to have more rebellions like you had in Wisconsin, where we take that power back to the taxpayers. Meanwhile, there's sort of triage. I mean, one project I've been working on a lot, and with the team at Reason, is working with some different state and local governments around the country who want to roll these pension plans back, either through a ballot initiative or through legislative action. So you've got Ventura County in California and the city of Phoenix, where they're going to have a public vote, a ballot initiative, where people are going to vote on cutting back these pension benefits. And you got places like the state of Florida and the city of Tulsa, Oklahoma, where it's the government, the elected representatives who are looking at rolling back these benefits. So there's definitely some pushback going on there, and I think trying to create more of those success stories just encourages more government officials and the people who support them to, have the guts to push back against this power. We are in a democracy, and one flaw of democracy is that ability of a majority or even a minority, while the majority is not paying attention, to vote themselves largesse out of the public purse.
When I pick up a paper sometimes and I'll read a scandal where, a athletic director of a local high school has had their hand in a cookie jar or whatever, and then they start spouting off the kind of money these people make in the first place. And I am absolutely shocked about even the salaries these people make. I mean, much less a retirement program.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, do you think these people are running a Fortune 500 corporation?
Yeah. You know, the salaries that they make, if you were
unbelievable.
in
the private sector,
you know, you would have a pretty high position. And I tell you, you wouldn't be working 40 hours a week. I mean, I was there. I never worked 40 hours a week. In fact, I ran for an oil company, I ran an order center in Houston, all right? The two guys that were before me, one guy died of a heart attack, and the other guy told me he couldn't do it anymore. They wanted to kill me.
They didn't like you. Yeah, they didn't like you.
I'll be honest, they didn't like me. They honestly liked me. And they put me there thinking, well, maybe he'll die there, you know. And I did a great job because I thrived on that. I thrived on this, and I knew not what I was doing. But I wasn't making that much money. But had that been well, first of all, there'd be no public sector job like that because this thing was high pressure. I mean, and you know, to work all day Sunday was normal. And I didn't say, you owe me money, I'm taking Monday off. No, you couldn't because you had tanker cars coming in. I mean, if they came in, you had to service them. But people, you know, I think this is when they talk about the bifurcation of countries, if we look back and we study our history, where countries split apart, and we wonder how this really occurs, well, we see that it's items such as this, where you have people who are working in the private sector, working at jobs very hard, not making all that much money. The cost of living is killing them. Then they have the sweetheart deal public jobs. These people are doing well, and that's how the very, very citizenry becomes bifurcated, and you find yourself fighting against one another. Whenever someone says, I couldn't find a job, but I applied for the TSA, and then I got a job, I tell you, I don't say anything, but inside I get really angry. I go, come on, guys, you know, geez, you know, you just screwed the system up, you know? You fell prey to this whole damn thing. And
well, maybe that's the intention, is to push all these people either into military service or into public service so they can control them.
Adrian, isn't that true? Isn't it? In part, this gives more power to the government. And by the way, we have about a minute and a half to go, right? So I want to leave a little time for you, yes, for a
you're absolutely right. The people who work for government, then you know, even if as an individual they may not you know, toe the party line or be indoctrinated or think that the government should have more power, it doesn't matter because their union dues go to feed a union organization that wholeheartedly supports bigger government and who convinces their members to get out and walk the streets and rally in favor of elected officials who favor big government and against elected officials who oppose big government, and on and on. So it's a very self-supporting Mobius strip of big government.
Adrian, I'm sorry, we only have about this flew by. This absolutely flew. We only have about 45 seconds to go. So let me give you about 30 seconds of that before we close out so that people know who you are and something about your organization.
All right, thanks, Joe. All right, so I'm Adrian Moore. I'm Vice President at the Reason Foundation. You can find out more about us at reason.com or reason.org. We are an awesome libertarian organization out there fighting for free minds and free markets and pushing back against larger government.
All right, Adrian, thank you so much. In the interest of full disclosure, I do support financially the Reason organization, their fine group. Adrian, thank you very much, and please accept our invitation to return at a later date.
All right. I look forward to it.
Thank you so much, Adrian.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. Folks, this is the end of tonight's broadcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors for the financial support, and we'd like to thank you for listening in. You can further the cause of liberty by recommending this program to your friends and let us hear from you. Our email address is comments@libertytalkradio.com. Remember, you're either allowing your liberties to be taken away or you're striving to protect them. Unfortunately, there is no middle ground. With that, until next time, I'm Joe Cristiano. This is Liberty Talk Radio on 1170 KFAQ. Stay well, stay tuned.